Right. We're gonna a minute or two reviewing what we did last time, then we to more detail about what we produced to you last time. And you have to guess what's on the screen today because I forgot to turn it on. So. Those people who are watching in person. Right. So let's start out by talking about what we know about server-side scripting. I think last time we talked a little bit about client-side scripting, and today we're just going to focus on server-side scripting because that's what the bulk of this course is about. First of all, server-side scripting is used for the creation of web pages. Right? This is in contrast to client-side scripting, which is usually used to alter a web page that has already been created. Extend this a little bit to say a creation of content for the web, because not all server-side activities return a complete web page. In the case of Ajax, you have something like this. In an A, you see a list of things. In an HT, see a list of things. That server-side activity that doesn't return an entire web page, but it returns part of a web page. So we could say creation of content, server-side is responsible for. Server-side code, you can't hear anything. Okay, let me see what's wrong. Someone else said what? Okay, so let's test we're doing this from there. It's using the right microphone. It does look like it is using this, because as I talk, as I get close to the mic, I can see this is going. Let me make sure WebEx is using that. Settings in WebEx. Audio. I am using, oh, that's me using the wrong thing. So let me go. All right. Can you hear now? I'm assuming you cannot hear now. Yeah, if you could. We're going to troubleshoot a little bit here. Are you on a PC? Yes, I am. Oh, you're asking them. Oh, okay, I see now. I can hear. Still can't hear. Are you on a PC? Are you there yet, or did it block you, or? I don't understand why that would be. Um, I don't know what the issue is, but we apparently are getting audio, and the settings are set to do that correctly. And the system method is we're using the system setting is for the microphone, and the settings within WebEx indicate that we are okay. All right, I'm going to continue then. I'm assuming that it's a problem with the other person's setup. I don't recall the name off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Trisha, I think it was. Okay. Okay. Server-side code is responsible for the creation of content, right? And oftentimes we're talking about complete web pages. Server-side code therefore runs before the page is delivered from the web server to the client. Server-side code often integrates with databases. Databases is one of the things that you can do client-side. I know can't is a big word, but even if you could do it easily, you would not want to allow your clients to connect to the database. Okay. Okay, you can hear now. Excellent. Okay, so even if you could connect to the database on the client side, you wouldn't want to do it because of security reasons and so on. Server side does typically the heavy lifting of an application, such as database interactivity. Server side can be done in multiple different languages. PHP, Python, Ruby. We are using platform ASP.NET, which is a platform. It's not a programming language. Platform and or a framework, I guess you could call it. And we're going to be using that in conjunction with C# to do some of the programming activities. All right. Let's show you how to create this. Oh, within ASP.NET, we are going to be using Razor pages. And so at this point, let's create a Razor page application so I can show you how to create one and how to changes to it. We went over this last time, but again, it wasn't very thorough because as we were running out of time. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio. This is a big program. It might take a minute to open up. I'm going to create a new project. And I'm going to select ASP.NET Core Web App using Razor Pages. So this will create a project template for creating an ASP.NET Core application. A core application is one that uses the core tools to connect to databases and manipulate databases. And we're going to get some example Razor Page code, which is good. It's convenient for lecturing about that. So we're going to pick this. A lot of these look the same. Be sure you're picking this one. Next, we're going to go and call it something. Again, please change this from Web Application 1. I'm going to change it to say Tuesday. I'm going to put it on the desktop. Place solution and project in the same directory. I usually do that. Do you have a question or just select at least .NET 6.0. Take the most recent one that says long-term support. So that would be if you're running off a new installation, .NET 8.0. This first example, we're not doing any authentication, so there's no logging in. So select none. Hit create. Create will create that folder and create a bunch of files. And we're going to go over very briefly some of the files, and then some we're going to maybe come back to later, and then some will go in more detail. Program.cs says for this particular web application, what components are being used. And it starts it up and runs it. Usually we don't touch this in this class. If you did, don't. App settings, now it really doesn't contain anything. At some point, this will contain our database connection information. But sometimes that gets created through the Visual Studio application as you create a database connection. So a lot of times you do not have to go in to debug that. There are some cases where it's important to view this file and to check it out, and we'll come to those when we need to. This application doesn't have any databases, so we're not really concerned about this. www-root is a web server's root folder. And this is where we put files that are not Razor pages that are going to be accessed by our application. Go and I'll make some changes to this probably in the second example we go over today. But this is where we would put additional JavaScript code, additional CSS code, where we would put images that we would want used. And our pages are where we would put if we happen to have a static HTML page. If I'm using Razor Pages, chances are I'm going to use Razor Pages for everything, even if the web page is static. So you could, though, put a plain old .html page in here too if you wanted to. Pages is where our Razor pages are going to live. And there's two. Right now, there's two sections. There's the Razor pages themselves that are called from the root, and there is this layout file. This layout file is the common code just going to be used on all of our Razor pages. So if you look at this, an index page, index.cs HTML, is basically an HTML file with some server-side components in. Now, by default, this page is going to be created along with this layout page. So when we access the web server's homepage, is index.cshtml, which would be the home page that we're going to execute. When we do that, we're getting this page, and this page is comprised of all the HTML on this page, and where you see render body, that's where the code in CISS_HTML page gets put. Where you see render body, that is where this HTML gets put when that page is rendered, when that page is displayed. There were some problems with Google Chrome security settings on here. I'm going to use Microsoft Edge. I'm going to run this, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. When I run this, it fires up a little internal testing server. So yes. And we get eventually our home page, which is a mix of what we have in the layout, _layout.cshtml, and the index.cshtml. Some of this, like this stuff up here, is from the layout, but this seamlessly creates is by combining the HTML code from both of those files. This has a huge advantage as it gives us a consistent look on our website within our web application. One of the things that we want in our web application is consistency. We want pages to look the same. We want pages to have the same navigation. All right, and without having to go in and change the navigation on every page, this gives us one place that we can go in and put that code. If I want to put something on the home page, I can add the HTML tags in there. And it will be added just to the index page. Graph saying this is our home page. If I go to the privacy page, it's not there. Why? Because we added it to the index.cshtml. If you notice, there's no URL. There's just the name of our server, which is localhost : on the port 7070. By default, the index is what gets called. If we simply go to the web server's root, or if we go to a folder's root directory. For privacy, we don't see the privacy.cshtml. We just see /privacy. This is the result of one setting in our control file, I believe it was, program.cs. Routing. Not mistaken, that controls that. In other words, what it does is it takes, and if we just ask for index, it will go to the pages directory and execute index.cshtml, which including the stuff from the layout page along with the page that's in the code that's in the index.cshtml. If I put something in here in the layout page, this will be on every page. This is on every page. If I go to privacy, we'll notice it there too. Why is it on every page? Because we put it in the layout.cshtml. All right, how do we add a razor page? We go up to the folder we want to add it in, we right mouse, say add, Razor page, and we give it, we could start out by doing Razor page empty, but later on we'll be using these options. And I can give and we can give it a name. So by default it takes index 1. I'm going to change the name to something else. Let's say this is the About Us. And there you'll know there is the About Us page. It gets added there. Now, right now, we haven't done anything with it, but every Razor page has a second file associated with it besides the .cs HTML file. It has the .cs file. And the .cs file is where we can put code. Click on this one. CS. We can put code. That's .css, my mistake. This is where we can put the code for the page. And right now, we're not doing anything special when this page loads. These are essentially static web pages. So there's going to be nothing to process that in the code. Later on, when we access databases and do stuff with that, display content, we'll put some of the stuff in this code behind in the .cs file, and we'll put the display portion of it in the CSS HTML file. So CSS HTML file is what the user is going to see. Code in the .cs file is sort of the glue. It'll become the glue between what the user sees and any processing that we need to perform. Now that processing may be something simple as like doing a mathematical calculation, right? Or it might involve querying a database, looking for everyone whose name starts with an A, something along those lines. But whatever the processing is done, it's put in the CSS file. That's where our C# code is going to appear. But for right now, we can ignore that, and I'm just going to put About Us and About Us. And this website is for Learning Community College. Is this North or South Abbey Road? Doesn't matter. Now, I'm going to run this and I'll save the trouble, but we have a problem because we don't have the navigation to get to this page. We could run it. I could put in the name of the page. Pulls it up, but we don't have that as one of the links up here. So we're going to change that. If you think about it, where does the code go to change that? Well, we're going to want this page on every, we're going to want this navigation, including the link to this page on each one of our web pages. Therefore, we're going to put it in the layout CSS HTML. And we're just going to copy it before. So we have a link for the home page. We have a link for privacy. Create this. Make it a link for About Us. Run it. This is the home page, and now we should have a link. Each one of our pages to About Us. So we go to Privacy, boom, About Us. We're all set. So you should have enough information to do the homework assignment that's due next Wednesday, actually. All right, because all you'll do is you'll take your basic HTML file that you created for Lab 1, and you'll break it down into your home page plus 3 other pages. One for, forget the topics, one for ASP.NET, one for web forms, and one for MVC, I think. I don't know, this is written in the thing, but you'll create 3 pages and make sure those pages are on the navigation. So it will involve creating the web pages through the process that I did, and it will involve also adding them to the navigation in the manner I did. All right. Now, when you're done with an assignment, what do? You close out of here, take the folder that your web application's in. In this case, it was Tuesday on the desktop. You zip up the entire folder. And that's what you upload to me, zip file. Right? Zip up the entire folder. Likewise, if you're asking me a question about something, if you have a question like something doesn't work the way that you expect it to, or it's not connecting to the database or whatever, zip up the whole folder. Don't take just a single Razor page and send it to me, or don't copy and paste the code into the email message. Zip up the entire folder and send it to. Because as you can see, there's a lot of files necessary to run this application. And if you just give me the Razor page by itself, it's going to be difficult for me to run it and see the results exactly the same way that you're seeing them. All right. We're going to open up another example. So let's say we already have, or let's say we want to come back to this example. How do we do it? Well, we can double click on the project. So I'm going to go to this example that I've already written. And I'm going to double click on the solution. I said the project, I meant the solution. You actually can open up the project by itself. It might generate another solution file though. So to be safe, open up the solution. And if you ask the question, use Visual Studio 2002. Let's take a minute and run this, and then look more detail. So I have run this. Same basic as before. However, if you notice, I have some additions to this. This doesn't look exactly the way the default is. This has a yellow background instead of a white background. And it has an extra image here. That's important to cover because, again, we don't all want to turn in projects that look exactly like everyone else's. Your website ought to have an individuality. It ought to be what your, it ought to look like a completed web page for whatever the assignment was. All right, if we're doing an assignment for a restaurant, it should look like a restaurant's homepage and other pages. So you should customize the look of the page, and we're going to show you some ways that you can customize it. First of all, if you remember, I said that www-root is where we can put other files. I have an LCCC logo file, .png, I have a style sheet file here. Probably should have moved this into the CS folder, but we'll work with what we have right now. Now, those are things, if you look, that I want on every one of my pages. Homepage, CISS216, and convert. We want the image and we want the yellow to be on that. So we're going to put that in the layout file. So if we look at the layout file for this example, we'll see I added the end of style sheets a link towards that style sheet. Now, you could have more than one style sheet per page. ASP.NET Razor pages by default use Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is sort of a framework for easy styling of your web pages and to get consistency and to styling. That would really be a good topic for you to look up and read on your own. We're not going to talk about it too much in this class. Maybe we'll review it to some degree, but what we're using is we're using the framework of Bootstrap to do this. We then are given a CSS site CSS that we could put our code in. And for no good, well, I guess it is for a good reason. I wanted to show that we could have another style sheet as well. These sort of stack on each other. And the last one in generally wins. So in other words, on this style sheet, I have background color of yellow for the body. And that's what makes the body yellow. We can add a second style sheet. We could also change the site.css 1 and 2. We put this, for example, to say use green text. These cascade. It's the name cascading style sheet. You start with the one that applies to the top one that applies to many elements. We then have the site CSS that applies to some elements. And if it's overridden in subsequent style sheet, the last one takes precedence. If it's not overridden, then it stays. So in this case, we're going to have our yellow background and green text. It's a little hard to see, but that is it. So you can create your own style sheet, which I did in this example. Probably a better way to do it would be to put these changes in the site CSS file. So I'm going to go and do that here. Delete this sheet and delete it from the layout as well. To answer your question, yes, this will be recorded. So there we have very ugly colors. At least I think they're ugly. So an olive green, and our text would be forest green. We have, so it has a green tint, but it's more of a color. I think that doesn't look bad. Hey, they don't have to look pretty. That's what you're going to do on your assignments. You're going to make it look perfect. Here I'm just illustrating the techniques. All right. The logo. How do we get the logo? Well, again, we want the logo on every single page. Therefore, I'm going to put it in the layout.cshtml. Put it up here. Now, if I don't have anything prior to this, it is in the web servers. It is in whatever the current directory is for this. And so therefore, all of these are in the web servers root because they're in the first layer of pages. So I can just say that logo.png is in the same folder as these, so I can say logo.png. A better way to do this would be to add folder for images, move that code into there, and I'm going to do tilde / images. And we still get it, and it doesn't matter what directory you're in, that code will work. So that's a better way to do that. So by all means, make your page stand out. This isn't a class in web design, per se. That doesn't mean that you can't practice your CSS skills, your skills with layout, everything that we've done in CISS 216. All right, so take advantage of this and really get, really make good-looking web pages. Right. Created 2 pages. This one uses Greek text and is our CISS 216 page. Sometimes you'll see the word model. Model refers to the .cs file. So in this case, for example, the model for the 216 page is CISS 216 model, which corresponds to this file. How do I know that? The namespace up here, these are page example 1 pages. Public class is CISS 216 model. So that's what this file is. Corresponds to this declaration up here. Now again, this particular page doesn't have anything fancy in the model. Doesn't have anything at all. There's no real processing. What I'm going to introduce to you today, and it seems like we always end up with cliffhangers in this class. The last 5 minutes we start to cover a topic that we maybe don't have complete time to cover, but you're welcome to investigate this more on your own, and we will cover it in more detail next time. But we have this page here where we can convert temperature from centigrade to Fahrenheit. So for example, 40 degrees centigrade equals 104 degrees Fahrenheit. 0 degrees centigrade equals 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and so on. This is the first example we're going to go over where code in that model actually comes into play. Let's look at this one. I'm going to look first of all into the CSS_HTML file, then I'm going to look at the model. All right. Notice that I have same thing I had before. I have an HTML form. Method is post. That's important, right? When we post something, it goes, the request is submitted in a slightly different manner than if we do a method of get. Post means not on the query string. It means part of the internal request object. Other than that, we have a form value, form input value. It's just an HTML input tag. We have our button. And notice in two places we have @model. When we see @model and then a name here, that's referring to a variable in the model. So @model result refers to this variable here. Public string, I have it as an optional value. It's the first time the page loads, there's nothing in it. And the input from this goes into @model empc. Or it comes from, I'm sorry, my mistake. It comes from model tempc. Why is that? Well, we want it that way because when we enter in temperature, I click go, get the conversion. This stays at what was entered the last time. This stays at the value that was put in the model. Let's look at what the model code does. Model code is on post. There's a few different ways to do this, but because we used the post method on the form, we're saying on post here. This is the code that's going to happen when we submit the form. So what do? We grab value tempc from form. What do I mean by the value tempc from the form? How do you know what that is? It's the thing that has the name of tempc. Its name matches right here. I then do a calculation. Convert from centigrade to Fahrenheit. I take tempc, I multiply it by 9, I divide by 5, and I add 32 to it. Then I set the result variable to this. All this happens before the page is displayed. Keep in mind, on post is the code that executes and sets up the values in the model. Then the CSS_HTML page executes and is displayed, and we pull values from the model put on the page. So we click submit. This happens. When we're done, these variables are all filled in. tempc is filled in with the value from the form. tempf is the value that we've calculated for Fahrenheit. And result is this little result string we formed. All of these are model variables. And we can reference them in the CSS_HTML page by saying @model dot and the name of the variable. Therefore, when we run this, I'm going to debug it in a second. Be a better way to show it. But go. The on post statement runs, does the calculations, then the page displays to take the value from the model. Let's go into debug mode. And debug is something that you should, I hope that you've learned when you learned the intro to C#. But I'm going to put on post, I'm going to put a breakpoint here, which means when I run this, it's going to stop when it hits that line of code. So run this. That page, type in my value, I hit go, we go back to and it's going to walk us through each step of the process. So we're going to get the value from form, convert it to double, and store it in temp C. Then step into the next instruction. We notice we can, by hovering our mouse, temp C equals 22. So pull that value from the form, stored it in temp C. Now doing this calculation to calculate temp F, hasn't done the calculation yet, so temp F equals 0. Go and do that. We fill in temp F with the value from that. One more time. We return. So notice all this code executes before our page gets displayed. The job of this is to do the calculations and fill in values in the model, excuse me, variables in the model that the page itself, the CSS_HTML page, is going to use in displaying the results. So now we click continue, and the page gets displayed. The page is displayed using value from the model called temp C, which we saw came from the form, the value of the model variable called result, which we took temperature in Fahrenheit and concatenated on the temperature in Fahrenheit. Now we'll have more examples of this, and none of this is required for your second homework assignment. So you'll have plenty of time before you have to do this on an actual homework assignment. Are there any questions, either here or out in television land? Okay, good. A reminder that I will be in a couple minutes, I'll be up in the lab, and I will also be on WebEx if any of you want to call in for lab time, or you can show up for the in-person lab. It's your choice. If there are no more questions, we will see you next week. So we need the Visual Studio with the purple logo. Yes, I don't know what you mean by red and by blue. I think you're saying that you have Visual Studio Code. Yeah, Visual Studio Code is this one. Yeah, they're not even different versions, they're different applications. Visual Studio Code is in blue, and Visual Studio is, I guess, the purple one. I never noticed the colors before you pointed that out. Okay, so yes, download Visual Studio 2022 from the Microsoft site. All right, we will see you next week.